which then the answer is 1.92 for every whatever you want to pay. So you have to earn 19,200 and sorry, 19,000.
1,922.
Yeah, 1,922.
Zero.
Yeah, whatever. And then GST is actually equal to $9.61. Isn't that awesome?
900 or
So now you have to add
$96.
So now in this bracket, you got to earn $96. $96. So you can just imagine this computer is going to cost you $19.23 plus $9.61. So it's going to cost you $1,932,
2,000.
almost $2,000.
No, over 2,000.
Okay. I'm obviously having a great day today with my mind. I apologize heartily, but do you understand the problem? We think we're going to buy $1,000 computer. We've got to earn more than $2,000 to pay the taxes to be able to buy that computer. So you need to figure out what your tax bracket is. You can look it up and find out what your money is. Now, obviously, the early money that you earn, that's what you're spending on the necessities of life, the food, the clothing, the shelter. But whenever you want to buy something that's, quote, a toy and not a desperate necessity, then you have to do the math at the top end of your bracket, not the bottom end of your bracket, because the bottom end of the bracket is going to pay for your necessities. So it's true that when it's a scaling scale, the first $10,000, you're only not paying any taxes on at all. But that's the stuff that you have to spend on food and the very necessities. So whenever you're buying something that's not a desperate necessity, you've got to take it off the top end of your brackets. And you can go online and look it up, Alberta tax brackets and the federal tax brackets, figure out what yours is and do the math every time you're tempted to buy something. And not because you shouldn't buy it, you're allowed to do whatever you want to do with your money, but because you need to know the actual cost to you in terms of how much you have to earn to pay the taxes to have this item. And the biggest advantage that WFG people have is we actually only have to earn the right amount of money for it, because many things that we can buy are tax write-offs. Including computers are tax write-offs. So think about that. Think about whenever you're planning to do something, if you can combine it with WFG. So if you want to go and visit somebody somewhere, make sure you talk to several people that you can prove you talk to and help them learn about WFG, and then maybe you can write the trip off. And if you want to go to see Vegas, go at convention time and go to a convention, have a wonderful time there. And then the time you spend enjoying yourself is not going to cost you that extra money because you're already there with something that could be written off. I'm going to hand it back to Z, and thank you for your time. Thank you.
Woo. All right. Thanks, Mama. Thanks for sharing that. All right. So did we learn something there? Difference between gross and net. And it's let me see if I can see some more faces. I wish I could see you all. They keep changing stuff in Zoomland, and then I'm catching up to learn how to use it. There, I can see more of you now. It's pretty sobering though, isn't it? When you think about, so, and I had to quickly answer the door, so I don't know if you covered this, but a lot of times when we talk to people about income, what number do people give us? How much do you make? What number do they give us? Their gross or net number?
Gross.
They give us their, yeah, that's right. And it is sometimes gross, isn't it? Considering how much of that we don't get to keep. So we think in terms of gross income, but we spend in terms of net income. So there's a massive disconnect in terms of affordability if we're not actually breaking it down and running things like a budget where we're actually looking at, here's my take home, and here's the different places that has to be allocated. How many people out there, lots of you are advisors, I'm doing this a long time, some of you are brand new, how many people out there do you think are actually doing that? Actually have a budget? Very, very few. It's not very sexy. And sometimes if you're on a budget, it's like, oh, well, you must be kind of poor to be on a budget. You know who needs the budget the most? Is people who have a lot of money, because they might not be directing it. I shouldn't say the most, we all need one. But whether you make a lot or whether you have very little, being in control and understanding the true cost of things is how, first of all, we empower ourselves. And secondly, that we actually can feel good about what we're spending because we know it fits within our premeditated decisions and us managing it instead of, or us being the master of it, instead of being the master of us. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, where did I want to go next? There was one fleeting thought that just escaped me, so we're going to move on to the next thing, and if we need to, we'll come back. Here's the stuff we're going to cover today as time allows. We're going to go through those tax brackets. So she led us into the tax conversation. Now we're going to look at what they actually are. We're going to dwell on Alberta. Mama's sitting right here just in case I make a mistake so she can correct me or she can catch any, but when you start trying to present and run calculations, sometimes it gets a little boggling, but we'll run through that. Then we're going to talk about those retirement sources of income, which are going to be the government sources, the money that can come from corporations, and then lastly, what we have to pile up and save. And what that kind of looks like. So we'll go back over here. I have this kind of pre-drawn from before, so hopefully this make it easy to follow along. And bear with me because I have the numbers pulled up here somewhere on my screen. There they are. All right. What this is meant to represent, what this little image is meant to represent, is how our income is taxed. All right, there's two places that we pay tax. Do you guys agree with this? We pay tax to the federal government and we pay tax to the provincial government. Oh, and by the way, is that even true what I just said? No, I'm a dirty liar. We don't pay taxes in two places. Where else do we pay taxes? GST, sales tax. I mean, actually, if you start to think about all the places we pay tax, and didn't she make a great point? You have to earn money, pay tax on it so that you can pay tax on the stuff that you buy in the form of GST. Isn't that wild? You are paying for GST with after tax dollars. That's crazy. It's crazy. Anyhow, here we go. Is that not crazy? My mom agrees. Okay, so we're going to start with the federal brackets. So here is $0 down here at the bottom. The first, now I have these numbers pulled up and now I'm doubting myself whether these are 2024 numbers or 2023 numbers. Don't get too caught up in the number, the exact number, so much as the concept. Okay, so I think these, I don't have time to double check myself now, but I'm pretty sure these are 2024 numbers. All right, this is how the bracketed tax system works in Canada. Between 0 and 53,000. You know what? Let me try and write that a little neater in case anyone's actually trying to follow along. Between 0 and 53. This is me trying to write it neater. Look at, I'm trying real hard. There, $53,358. So between $0 of income and $53,358, not counting our personal exemption. So Mom actually mentioned that, right? You get to make a certain amount of money that is exempt from taxation. We're going to keep things a little bit simple today and not factor that in, but there is going to be an amount of dollars in here that are going to be tax free. Okay. Outside of that, between 0 and 53,000, the first federal bracket is 15%. Okay, everyone with me so far? Next, between $53,359 and $106,717, the next bracket is, that's not as neat as I want it to be. We'll try again. Let's get a little information. What federal tax bracket? At 80,000.
29.
There you go. A bunch of you got. By the way, don't be sure you question or you typed it in wrong. Don't worry about it. For us to learn, you can tell Mom all the time, even when we're just trying to say words. So 29%. So sometimes people think if I'm in a 29% bracket, that means I'm paying 29% on my income. That's not the case, right? We're paying tax on each bracket on those dollars in that bracket. So even if I'm up here, even if my income's at $180, I'm paying 15% my personal exemption in this bracket, 20.5% in this bracket, 26%, 29%. And then if I were to earn over 235, I'm paying 33% on only the dollars over and above that bracket. This is known as what? It's known as your what rate? Who knows? Your personal
Marginal?
There you go. Marginal tax rate. You got it. That's your marginal tax rate. So another way to define, or another way that marginal tax rate is said, it's how much tax you'll pay on the next dollar you earn, right? So if I was at 165,430, and sometimes people say on the last dollar you earn, we don't have to get caught up in that. The idea is that if I'm here, if I'm in this bracket, on the next dollar I earn, I'm going to pay 29% on that dollar. That's my marginal, see, make mistakes all the time. That's my marginal tax rate. Now, if I take my total income and then I know the total amount of federal tax I'm going to pay, and I divide one into the other, that gives me what? In other words, I'm going to use really easy math, really simple math. I made $100,000 and I paid $30,000 in tax. This is just a made up number. What rate of tax did I just pay? What's the math on that? I paid 30%, right? And what does that represent? Is that my marginal rate? 30% is not my marginal rate. It's my what? It's my average, right? Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Anne. So you've got your marginal tax rate and you've got your average tax rate. It's really important to understand how they're different and how they should affect the decisions that we make. Okay, now, although we're really digging into and beating up a little bit on how much tax we pay, is there anybody here who, if you had the choice, based on the fact that this is how the system works, if we couldn't choose to change the system, how many of you would still choose to be in the highest tax bracket? And by the way, if the answer is no, because you're like, I don't want to make that extra money, feel free to make it and give it to me. I will find some really good places to use it. So hey, it's not a bad thing. Considering this is how the system works, it's not a bad thing to be in the highest marginal tax bracket, because that's a good problem to have. That means you're earning a lot of income. And the higher that you can, here's my plug on that. If you're going to be in the highest marginal tax bracket, then you should probably make as much money possible in that tax bracket so you can pay the taxes and you actually get to keep the rest left over and go do some good things with it, including help a lot of people who definitely need our help. All right, now we're going to switch over to the provincial side. Now, Alberta, I'm dating myself here because I'm old enough to remember this, maybe not that many years ago, but each year it's farther away. I'm old enough to remember when Alberta was very simple. We had a 10% flat rate, barring the personal exemption. Other than that, it was 10%. And when people talked about the Alberta Advantage, I was like, that's what it is. That's a significant Alberta Advantage. By the way, those of you who are joining us from outside of Alberta, obviously the numbers will look different in your province. But since we had an NDP government, they made some changes, so that no longer applies. We now have a bracketed system in Alberta as well. And again, I don't remember if these numbers are 2023 numbers or 2024 numbers. So work with the concept, not with the number. But here we go. Your first bracket is 142,292. The next is 177,551. Somewhere in here is 227, can't even read my own writing, 660. And then somewhere in here, my scale kind of loses itself here, but you guys hopefully are working with the concept, 502. And then everything over and above that is at 15%. Okay, so first bracket, we're still at that 10%. Next bracket, 12, 13, 14, and then 15%. Okay, so here's my skill testing question. Well, does anyone know how much money I make? It's funny how in WFG we talk about it. If you've been to a fast start, or I think they still have my income up on the screen. It's old and it should really have gone up by now. I'm working on it. But if anyone knows, somewhere in the $400,000 range, what tax bracket am I in? I live in Alberta. I'm waiting for the answer. What marginal tax?
The highest.
Yes. And it's so good to have you back. I'm loving your answers. Which is what? What's that combined rate?
48%.
48% is exactly right. For some reason, I was like, hang on a second, is it really? Am I really in the 48% right? I hope you guys all feel really sorry for me. Here's the beautiful thing about World Financial Group is that although that is true, a whole bunch, and I know Mama talked about this already, a whole bunch of the stuff I get to enjoy and spend in my life, including the computer that I'm talking to you on, the devices that I use, and I don't just use them for business, although they are primarily for business purposes, if anyone asks. I get, right? So if we really understand that purchasing power between gross and net, that makes an enormous difference in how far my dollars can go and how much tax I have to give the government of the money that I make. Okay, good. Let's do a couple more, just to keep you guys on your toes. So again, this is an Alberta resident, and they make $131,000. What is their combined marginal rate at $131,000?
36.
There you go. Thank you, Michael Jilks. All right, let's do one more. Let's go $60,000 on the dot.
$30.5.
There you go. Thank you. Right in here somewhere. Okay, perfect. You guys got the concept. Are there any questions? And by the way, please only ask me things I know the answer to. No? No questions? Okay, we'll move on. All right, let's go. Where did I want to go next? We're going to go into sources of income, which is what the title of the class is, so we probably should fit it in. All right. We're going to talk about, we're going to fast forward you now into retirement. And hopefully we're looking at this from the standpoint of, oh, I remember I said I had something fleeting and then I forgot what it was. It came back to me, because we're going to talk about in the context of the difference between gross and net, because we're talking about sources of income in retirement. And does tax go away? By the way, so many people actually think this. Does tax go away the moment you get retired? You know how many people have told me when we go through the RSP explanation, you get a tax write-off on the way in, it grows tax deferred, and then you pay tax at 100% of your marginal rate on the way out. Do you know people have said, oh yeah, that's true, except when you retire? You know people have said that to me over my career? Like more than one, more than a few. That misconception is wildly out there. Again, lots of people might know that that's not true, but a lot of people, and any person who thinks that's true, that's hurting them, and we have to get to them. We have to make sure. Yeah, I can show that. And here, I'll show it again. And if anyone wants to take a screenshot of that, by all means, grab it real quick if you can. And by the way, again, please, I didn't double check these numbers this morning, and I should have. All right. Okay, so RSPs are taxable in the way. So we need to think of our retirement income in terms of the realities of taxation, but we also have to think of our ability to pile up money in that sense as well, because the examples we went through this morning were, hey, what amount do you have to make gross to pay the taxes to have the net amount of dollars to spend, right? That's what we were talking about, including, by the way, for your groceries, right? For the basic necessities of life. But we have to do that with what we save as well. Now, RSPs change the game a little because we get a tax write-off, but you guys get what I'm saying, right? If somebody wants to save in a TFSA, you've got to earn X amount of dollars to pay the taxes, to have a certain amount of left over, to not only pay all your bills, but then to have money left over to put into your savings accounts. So this is a very big deal. And at the end of this, I'm going to be plugging how powerful a business model Royal Financial Group is, because not just because we're in one of the highest paid industries, not just because this is stuff everybody's dealing with, and this is the very thing that we teach and that we live in and that we can arm ourselves with and be equipped to deal with as best as possible. But it's also a business where you can make passive income, right? You can build something that will pay you income that will take over a portion of what you would otherwise have to save to have to spend in retirement, which is a big deal. There, I just gave away the whole climax of my talk, but that's the point. Okay, here's what this model is. This is, and by the way, if you've seen this class before, you've heard me say this. I'm going to dig in, I'll interrupt myself, I'll jump around. We're going to dig into this as a group because we're workshopping it. But in a more simple, sort of straightforward step-by-step way, what I am showing you is what I show my clients as we prepare them for retirement. I literally did 3 appointments in the last week with people on the doorstep of retirement, and this is exactly what we went through. So it's as simple and complex as this. This is what I'm talking to people about in terms of, hey, where do we need to help you get at? And I'm talking about people who are within, you can have this conversation with a 20-year-old. But I was specifically having it with people that were literally about to pull the trigger and, sign the paperwork to get to start their pension. So it's It's the exact lessons that we go through. Retirement sources of income. There are three. There are three places that our money comes from, three categories. We're going to start down here and make this $0, and we're going to go up here and make this our goal. So what's our goal? Well, how about this? How about we do this? I'm going to actually, you won't know who this is, so this is privacy will be completely preserved, but I'm going to actually go through some real life numbers. So just give me 1 second while I pull it up. One moment, I should be able to get it right away here in my notes, hopefully. If not, I'll switch gears, but I just had the thought that this would be very practical because it would be very real numbers. Maybe I can't find it right away. Oh, shoot. Okay. All right, never mind. We'll do pretend numbers. Okay. They're gonna be valid. All right, so up here, we are going to put $5,000. So what does that goal represent? I would be discussing with my client, and hopefully, if they've been my client, not hopefully, but practically, we'll have been working on this. We will have been discussing this number and projecting towards it for some time. And essentially, we're looking at what amount of money on a monthly basis do you want coming in? Now, there's a couple of different ways we can look at this because we have to factor in that tax number for the purposes of our conversation today, especially since I've already used up half of our class time. We're going to stay in the gross world. So this $5,000 is going to be before tax. This is going to be gross. So if somebody was earning $5,000, let's say that they had a paycheck of $5,000 a month, that's $60,000 a year. If we go back to this, we can start to do some rough math on what their general overall marginal bracket will be. But if we wanted to break down exactly how much tax they would pay, and actually at 60,000, that puts us right in here. Oops. That puts us right in here. We could actually do the math, right? We could take 0 to 53,358. We could multiply it by 25%, and we could reduce it by our personal exemption and then do the math on $6,642, which is the difference between here and here, run that at the higher percentage, and we could actually get roughly now what things would factor in, any other deductions they might have, tax credits, stuff like that, but we get a pretty close idea of what their net amount would be. Now, if they have a spouse and they can attribute some of their income there, right? This is where I'm shadowing the idea that some of this stuff is very simple in concept, but when we layer it all together, there can be some complexities. We're going to stick again with the concept part. So let's go back to this. For today's class, we are dealing in gross. Okay, so category number one, our three sources of income in retirement. The first one, and I always talk about this first because it's the one we expect everybody as a resident of Canada will get. It's what's coming in from the government. Now, let's get a little interactive. What comes from the government? What are those sources? Who knows? You can throw it in the chat, unmute yourself.
CPP and OAS.
There you go. And what do they stand for? Thank you. And that was Jason, I think I heard the voice of. What do they stand for?
Canada Pension Plan and Old Age Security.
There you go. Now, has anyone heard of the GIS? That one is a component.
Guaranteed Income Supplement.
There you go. That's a component of the Old Age Security Program. So I'm just going to make a little note of it. Again, we'll keep things simpler today. We won't dig into that too much, but I'll make a note in case you come across that. And by the way, if this inspires you to learn more about this stuff, don't use it as an avoidance behavior because it's all the knowledge in the world isn't going to benefit other people unless we're talking to them and we can get in front of them. But sorry, Louis, let me just mute you there, friend. But yeah, it's good to learn about. Okay, so CPP, the numbers we're going to use here, because there's an average CPP amount, there's a maximum amount. If you were never an employee or a business owner that participated in CPP, you wouldn't actually have any money coming in from that. But who, and let me ask that question, who all participates in CPP? I kind of gave it away, right? If you have a job or you have a business or you're paying yourself income, any kind of income, you're going to be, you have to remit either as the employee or as the business owner and employee, you have to remit contributions to CPP. The Canada Pension Plan is a public pension, meaning that the amount that you're going to get out is not, they added up all you put in and then how it performed investment wise. And then that equals a sum of money, which determines how much you can then take out. What determines it is your level of participation based on how many years you participated, what your average income was over those years, which would determine how much you actually contributed, and then the age at which you take it. Now, at what age is CPP receivable without any reduction in the amount that you would get? What age is that?
65.
65.
There you go, 65. And if you do take it early, oh my goodness, I'm going from memory here now. Now I'm wondering if I remember. Okay, let's see. Let's test me on this because I just had a blank spot in my memory. For every month early that you take CPP, which you can begin as early as what age? 60. You got it, Joel. For every month early, what is it reduced? I hope I remember this correctly. Somebody can Google me. 0.04. Does that sound right? Yeah. Who knows? Somebody Google it. Don't take my word on it. I'm going from memory. That I've told many people. I've remembered it in the past. I remember that I remember it. I'm not 25% a month, Jody. That would be that. Thank you for your guess, but is it 0.6? It might be. It might be 0.6.
It's 0.6, 72 point.
Okay. And I said 0.04. I meant 0.4. So it's 0.6, not 0.4. So every month early that you take it from 65, it's 0.6. Maybe it increases by 0.4 every month you delay it. Anyway, you can Google this stuff. So even if you can't remember it, it's not a big deal as long as you remember the concept. You take it earlier, they're going to give you less, but they give you less, but you're taking it for longer, right? So if I took it at 60, not 65, I'm going to take a reduced amount that I would otherwise be entitled to, but I got it for 5 more years. That's 60 more months of payments at that lower amount. So then you can do the math at how long I would have to receive it in order to break even. Because when does CPP stop? When you pass away, when you die. That's right. So the big question in making these decisions accurately is knowing when you're going to die. If we knew that, man, we make all kinds of perfect financial decisions. Okay, what about OAS? So CPP is a pension plan, public pension plan that's contributed to by employers and employees and those earning an income. And by the way, it's still in decent shape if we look at its ability to pay out its obligations. What is OAS? Where does that come from? And I'm going to start you out. I'm looking for 3 terms, and the first term begins with general. General blank blank.
General government revenue.
Perfect. I was going for general tax revenue, but we'll give you the government. General tax revenue. In other words, the budget. Anyone hear anything about the budget just being released? Every government we elect releases a budget. And in that budget, one of the line items in terms of how they're going to handle something is the contribution or the rules around the OAS program. That's only available to be received at age 65 and above. You used to have to apply for it, and now it is automatically done based on, so the amount that you get comes from general tax revenue, but your particular amount is based on what? The income that you made in the previous year.
Previous year.
There you go. And I'm just going to leave you unmuted, and you and I can go back and forth. That's awesome. All right. So in terms of reliability, is it possible that we elect a government and they make changes to the OAS in terms of who gets what? Is it possible they make changes to anything, including the marginal tax rates? Yes, it is, because they have and they always do, right? So this is what it looks like right now, but that could change in the future. All right. For the purpose of this example, we're going to give this person $700 of CPP and $500 of OAS. And obviously we've made them at least 65 in order to be able to receive the OAS. But from that first source of income, we now have $1,200. Now, what is good to know about CPP and OAS in terms of its value going forward, its future value, is that it is indexed to the consumer price. Yes, there you go. It's indexed. So, and that, by the way, that calculation on OAS is done quarterly. So in a historical rising inflation environment, we have had historical bumps in the OAS. And by the way, there's a difference between real inflation that we experience at the grocery store and the gas pump and the way they calculate the consumer price indexes, which is what they base it on. So it's kind of a little bit of BS, but it still is increasing. In other words, it's not completely keeping pace. There's probably a reason they do that, because they would run out of money a lot sooner, but there you go. All right. How do you guys enjoy these little asides? Hopefully I'm not being too confusing. Number one source of income we covered. Number two is any kind of company or employer sponsored pension program. All right, again, we're simplifying things today. There are a few of these out there. The main ones are the defined benefit plan and the defined contribution plan. You may come across or have heard of things like a deferred profit sharing plan, or there's other pooled executive type pensions that might exist. There's a bunch of little variations that people will continue to come up with to try and maximize basically how they can pile up money or have executive retention plans and save money on taxes. But we are going to focus on, for the purpose of today, defined benefit and defined contribution. This is one of my favorite things to teach. I don't know why. I just love going over this with people, because hopefully I can help you take a very complex and seemingly confusing concept and just boom, 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 lay it out. You've got it. It's not confusing. You feel confident. Here's what I want you to remember. Two main forms of pensions, defined benefit and defined contribution, and start your file in your brain this way. A pension is a promise. Pension is a promise. They're promising to pay. In a defined benefit plan, they are promising the benefit. In a defined contribution plan, they're promising the contribution. So keeping track of which one's which and how they work, pension is a promise. Defined benefit, they're promising the benefit. Defined contribution, they're promising the contribution. So the old school, classic pensions. I work as a school teacher for 30 years. I retire, let's say 40 years. So I started when I was 25 and I retire at 65. I was there for 40 years. My income was X amount of dollars. Hopefully I got increases every year, which they do in the education system. And we know what age I started. We know what my income was throughout that entire period. We know what age I retired and started taking an income. Therefore, we can do there's a calculation, a formula, participation, age that you receive it, and is there something else I'm missing? Number of years of participation, amount of, I guess I summed that up in one thing. Number of years of participation, the amount that you made when you participated, and the age at which you took it creates a formula which gives you the dollars that you're going to get, the benefit amount. Defined contribution pension plans, still known as a pension plan, an RPP, registered pension plan, they are now promising the amount that's going to go in, which is often, but not always, a match or a percentage match of the employee's contribution. Are you guys with me on that? So in some cases, the defined contribution plans will be, here's how much we're going to put in to this plan for you. And you're going to select from, I've seen it everywhere from, you have 3 investment options you can select all the way up to 30, right? You're going to select what it's going to be invested in. And then whatever that grows to for however long you work here, and we give you money to put towards this, that's what you're going to end up with. So the final amount, there's no formula saying here's how much you're going to get. What ends up happening is there's a lump sum. There's a, whoa, did you hear that? Mm-hmm. Sorry, guys, we just heard a really big crash here. Just 1 second. Okay, she's going to go check on it. Hopefully everyone's okay. I just heard a massive crash. Okay, back on this. So anyway, what it piles up to, the lump sum amount. Now you'll be able to have that as a source of income, but it's not at all. Okay, everyone's okay. Something just got broken, but anyway, everyone's okay. Not in our office, in one of our neighbors' offices. Phew, that really worried me. All right, train of thought. So now you've got the lump sum, and that's got to provide you with income. Now, because it's not guaranteed what the benefit is, what are some of the risks that now exist in a defined contribution plan versus a defined benefit? What are some of the risks that exist?
You could run out of money.
You could run out of money, right? The defined benefit plans are designed to pay that benefit amount until you pass away. And if you have a spouse, it's actually written into legislation that the income that you're taking is based on them getting at least 60% unless they waive those rights, right? So a joint and survivor pension is actually legislated unless your spousal, your pension partner waives those rights. Now, a defined contribution pension can actually also be set up as a pension income, which could pay until you pass away. But what's one of the issues with that? Why is that something that most people don't choose when they get their defined contribution privilege, when they qualify to receive their money? They'll often not choose to make a pension out of it because why? They give up all flexibility and they give up all control. There's no way to take, once you set that in place, you can't, and the monthly amount that you'll receive, you can't make any adjustments to that number. What happens if you have a medical emergency? What happens if you have a capital emergency? What happens if you came into some additional money and you didn't want to take as much because you didn't want to pay as much taxes? You wanted to take the minimum amount. Can you actually close my door, please? You wouldn't be able to make any of those changes. Okay, how are we doing for time? We got about 15 minutes. So in this example, we're going to give this person, we're going to say that they got a defined benefit plan of $2,800. And you can see why I did this because I like easy math. So between $1,200 coming from the government, also gross and taxable, and $2,800 coming from our defined benefit plan, also gross and taxable, we're at $4,000. So what is our third and final source of income? It's YOU, right? What kind of accounts do we help people save in so that they can have a source of income? They can top up any other. By the way, does everybody have a company pension plan? It's only about a third of Canadians that actually even have that. So that would mean $0 here, right? They would have to make up all of that difference on their own. So what is the pots that we can use to save for the YOU part of this? And I am going to wait for some participation.
Annuities?
There you go. Who said that? Was that Jason? Annuities. So an annuity that we might own in an RSP, or we can own an annuity in any kind of an account, right? RSP, we could have a tax-free savings account. We could have a non-registered account. If we had a defined contribution plan and we commuted the value of that lump sum, we weren't going to take a pension income from it. We were going to manage it with the help of our financial advisor or ourselves. We would now have a LIRA or an LRSP, or if once we turned it into an income fund, it could be a LIF, right? All of these accounts can now be our sources of income. And some of them are going to be fully taxed, some are going to be partially taxed, and some we won't pay tax on at all. Right? What about an insurance tax shelter? I should make sure I mention that one. What other source of income could we have in retirement that would have come from YOU? Skill testing question. It's my favorite source of income.
Passive or residual?
Ooh.
How about from WFG? How would you like to be my mama who has a pension? My dad has a defined benefit pension from TELUS. What does it pay him? About 30 grand a year? What is it? Maybe it's more now because it's indexed. 38,000. So he has, so you better keep up if you want to let me keep saying this. It's time for us to increase your income. My dad earns a defined benefit pension of $38,000 gross, and he worked there for 33 years. Yeah. He worked at TELUS, used to be AGT for 33 years. My mom's WFG pension is about 4 times that. Now we got to do a little bit of work. I took the last year off. I got to work a little harder so we can build that up, and we should make it a higher percentage, because however much he's indexed by CPP or CPI by the Consumer Price Index, her ability to grow that pension based on the growth of her team is compound factors of that. So World Financial Group. Somebody else put in the chat, real estate. Write a Christmas song. I heard if they're a hit, you can be like Mariah Carey and make millions off of one song she wrote one time. Whatever you want to do that is, and by the way, we're using the term retirement here to indicate that it's passive, whether you go to work or not. My mom is here participating in World Financial Group, not because she has to, but because she wants to. So it's still passive income. Those dollars she's earning would still be coming in, whether she was here or not. And she just has the privilege, not the obligation that if she does any personal participation, she would just earn more and help more people and feel good about her impact right into her golden years. And by the way, it's a big part of how their lifestyle works now because they spend half the year or more actually. You guys, you were in Texas and Arizona last year for what? Was it 7 months? Something like that, to escape the winter. I don't know why I keep making those symbols, but anyway. And during that period, I think you guys did, what was it, 4 referrals to people who ended up getting codes in the US? They could probably do more because of the number of people they talked to, but just on a kind of casual, actively at work basis, they keep talking about World Financial Group and end up recruiting people in the US. And so WFG, because they're coded in the US, in the states that they're allowed to earn override income, WFG keeps sending them US dollars, and me too, by the way, which is pretty great, especially when you're going to Vegas and you have money piled up that you kind of forgot about that's already in US dollars from completely passive sources. I highly recommend that you do that. Okay. So if between all of these RSP, TFSA, non-registered LIRA, insurance tax shelter, let me put it to you this way. If this was your scenario and all you needed was $5,000 gross a month to live in retirement, and you had this, simply the supervisory and generational overrides. What about the fact that in World Financial Group, we get paid residual income on trails and renewals? Could you build, and I know I'm looking at you, Louis, not to out your specific numbers, but I've got people on my team that are targeting specific asset, AUM numbers, assets under management, the amount of money they'd like to have invested through all the clients they've helped in the millions. Maybe it's 5 million, maybe it's 10 million, because they have a target of exactly how much residual income they want that to compensate them as they enter into their retirement years. And as that income, as that asset number goes up, even without adding more clients, what happens to your compensation on it? Can also increase. Now, keep in mind, clients might pass away and that money might go to an inheritance, and those, for whatever reason, you weren't able to, take those kids as clients or whatever. Money could also move out. So I'm not trying to paint a false fantasy here, but the reality of being able to build something that pays you now and can pay you in the future is pretty phenomenal, pretty cool, because there's very, very few other places where you have we have the privilege of doing that. All right. Are there any questions on this in our last few minutes? Oh, we're all good. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about is a little bit of general rule of thumb math on how we can understand this. When we're sitting with our clients, we're like, well, okay, I need $1,000 a month, and maybe they don't have WFG, maybe they don't have any real estate, so they're just looking at their pots here. They've got RSPs, TFSA, non-registered LIRA, they've got insurance tax shelter. This is very, very generic. We can call it either the 4% rule or the 5% rule, depending on what rate you want to use. I try, and hopefully we, as an extension, not to be overly confusing with our clients. However, just like we might show them different interest rates in projecting what their money could grow to, we might show them 6%, 7%, 8%. We might show them 6, 8, 10, whatever you're comfortable kind of showing as a range. If your money earns this, here's what that will look like. And obviously we're showing an average return, unless you're doing what's called a Monte Carlo. Is that right? Monte Carlo? Why? I don't know. Both of us, maybe the smoke is affecting our brains this morning. Unless you're doing a Monte Carlo calculation, which shows 1 year 20%, 1 year 4%, variations. We typically, just for simplicity's sake, we show something on average over time. We can do the same thing in showing the opposite of, now we're starting to take that money and it still needs to be invested in growing. So if we were taking on a rate of 4% a year or 5% a year, here's the simple math on that. Sorry, something funny is going on here. At 4% a year, for every dollar you want to spend in retirement, you would have to have $25 saved. And when I say spend, I should say withdraw because spend is net, right? So we might be talking gross. For every dollar gross you want to withdraw, we'd have to have $25 saved if it was all RSPs. Again, complicated layers, simple in concept. The 5% rule is for every dollar we want to withdraw to spend, some portion of it, we would need to have $20 saved. Okay, so I'm going to give, and by the way, you're welcome, Michael Jilks. I'm giving you $2 million. You're 65 years old, and we're going to use the 5% rule. So $2 million at 5%, how much can you withdraw on an annual basis?
100 grand.
There you go. That didn't sound like Michael Jilks's voice, but good job,
Oh, that was
Michael.
Jason. Sorry, I didn't realize I was unmuted.
No, I'm teasing. That's Michael he hadn't quite got to the unmute button yet, so that was good. All right, so $2 million, and he'd have at the 5% rule, you'd have 100,000. If I wanted to have that same 100,000, I was being more conservative at 4%, I'd have to have how much saved? 2.5, right? Everybody with me? So if, and I'll give you a real example. Here, I'll do it down here so we have more space to write it out. So got a client. Actually, in the last few minutes here, let's run this calculation together. I've got a client who has approximately $700,000 in RSPs. They have $150,000 in their tax-free savings account, which has obviously done some good growth because what's the maximum amount you can put into a tax-free savings account as of, and when I say good growth, not necessarily exceptional, but what's the TFSA max for 2024? What's the TFSA total?
95,000.
There you go. So the most that person could have put in is 95,000, and obviously not all when it started in 2009, they were putting that in over time, and that grew to $150,000. By the way, I've seen some big numbers in TFSAs, which is pretty cool. Okay, so we've got 700,000 RSP, we've got 150 in the tax-free savings account, and we've got in non-registered accounts about, I'm going to round it up a tiny bit, about $50,000. RSPs, 100% taxable as income on the way out. The tax-free savings account, how much tax do we pay on that?
0.
0, thank you. I appreciate you guys participating. And if you're being shy, don't be shy. And what's the worst could happen? You get it wrong? We're all going to laugh at you? No, we're not, because then you'd all be laughing at me. So no laughing. You would just actually hopefully enjoy your class more if you got to participate. All right, non-registered. How is that taxed? And this is a bit of a trick question in our last minute.
On the capital gains.
There you go. That's a great answer. If it's invested in something subject to capital gains. So in other words, you bought a capital property like a home, like a stock, like a unit of a mutual fund. It was worth this amount. It's now worth this when you sell it. The difference between those two numbers, between the ACB, which is the cost, adjusted cost base, and the fair market value or the sell, that's called the capital gain. And again, trick question, how much of that is taxable? It's called a 50% inclusion rate. So you pay tax on half, except for now, since June 2024, 25th of 2024, now every $250,000 in a capital gain that you earn in any given year is now taxed at 2/3, 67%. You're welcome. Thank you, government. All right. So my point is, let's do some really rough math. We're not going to worry about 66%. Okay, and 66, not 67. I don't know why I said 67. Maybe I'm rounding up. We're out of time, but I want to just quickly do this math with you. So we've got approximately $900,000 here. There is a difference, and it's an important difference, and hopefully we kicked off the class with that message. There's a big difference between gross and net, but for the purpose of this calculation, if we were using the 5% rule, how much money on an annual basis could someone withdraw? We're not talking about how much they would get to keep of it, but how much could they withdraw from these accounts and hopefully have that money last them for their lifetime? About $45,000, which works out to how much per month?
$37.50.
There you go. So if we went back up to this model here, it wouldn't be, if somebody had around $900,000, that would be approximately $37.50 that they would be able to withdraw. in order to go from here to whatever number they want. All right, that's our time. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Sometimes I feel like I can keep things pretty straight and streamlined. Sometimes I talk all over the place. However, this experience was for you today. My hope is that you learned something, reinforced something, or checked your knowledge, which many of you know so much. Well done. Have a great rest of your Saturday. Hopefully it's not smoky where you are. And go help a family today. They need this. They're dying for this
Thanks.
information.
Thanks for the great class, Z. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thanks, Jason, for participating. Bye, everyone.